are. Surratt throws back to Schwedis. Gerhardt throws to Davis, and this is the way you make a touchdown. A new Cotton Bowl record for 87 yards.
In 1956, Jim Brown got snubbed for the Heisman Trophy winning because he was African American. At that time frame, when Jim Brown got snubbed, nobody thought an African American could ever win the Heisman Trophy, but Ernie Davis proved them wrong. By proving everybody wrong, in 1961, Ernie Davis was the first African American ever to win the Heisman Trophy. After Ernie Davis won the Heisman Trophy, he proved that anything was possible. It doesn't matter what race you are, and he's paving the way for modern-day athletes still today. Later that year, Ernie Davis was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. In 1961, Ernie Davis accomplished a lot of things people thought was impossible for his race at the time. He was the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and he won the Heisman Trophy. So that year, he showed anything could be possible, and doesn't matter what race you are. On December 14th, 1939, Ernie Davis was born in New Salem, Pennsylvania. Ernie's father passed away in an auto accident before his birth, and his mother, Avis Marie Davis Fleming, sent him to live with his grandparents as she was in search of a job. He grew up with his cousin and his grandparents in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, and moved to Elmira, New York at the age of 12 to live with his mother and his stepfather. Elmira, New York was a white neighborhood, and it was hard for Ernie to fit in his childhood. But on the football field, he proved everybody wrong. Ernie has been an all-star athlete since he was young. In high school, he was an all-star basketball player and even on the baseball field. But his main passion was on the football field. In Ernie's senior year, he had a lot of scholarship offers, and he was a varsity captain. To recruit Ernie, Ben Schwartzwalder, the Syracuse Orangemen head coach at the time, had Jim Brown go talk to Ernie on why he should commit to Syracuse, and that worked, because Jim Brown was Ernie's favorite player. Here's what Ernie said about committing to Syracuse. Quote, "I want to play in the big time," Davis said, "and a lot of people, including Jim Brown, pursued me that I'd have better opportunities there." End quote. When Ernie Davis arrived at Syracuse, it was not what he expected. Everybody was giving him weird looks and making racial slurs. Ernie's roommate was also African American. His name was Jack Buckley. Buckley was Ernie's best friend, and he was one of the only people that was nice to Ernie at Syracuse. Baker showed Ernie around the campus and introduced him into a girl, which he ended up marrying. Ernie didn't play during his freshman season at Syracuse because it was the rule at that time, even though he dominated at practice with his speed and power. Ernie played basketball for Syracuse his freshman year, but he decided to quit to focus on football. Like I said, although freshmen weren't allowed to play in varsity games, Davis quickly became the team star by dominating in practice. His humility drew acceptance by even some of the more intolerant players and coaches, who often had no choice but to admire and respect his athletic greatness and competitive nature, if nothing else. This is what one of Ernie's teammates said about him when Ernie was a freshman. Davis was a coach's kid's dream, modest, hardworking, team-oriented, a sportsman who never put down opponents or teammates, an excellent practice player. He lapped everyone, said John Mackey, a Syracuse teammate who later started in the NFL. He compiled 886 yards on 98 carries and 10 touchdowns as a sophomore, earning the nickname the Elmar Express, and the first of 3 All-American selections. Although he pulled a hamstring shortly before the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day in 1960, Davis scored 2 touchdowns to help beat the University of Texas 23-14, cementing an undefeated campaign and the national championship for the Orangemen. Ernie ran up 877 rushing yards on an outstanding 7.8 yards per carry during the 1960 season, and followed up with another 823 rushing yards in 1961 to win the Heisman Trophy as the nation's top player. Davis captured his college career with 140 rushing yards and an MVP performance at the 1961 Liberty Bowl, and finished with 2,386 total rushing yards on a 6.6 yards per carry and 35 touchdowns, an all-school record, which that is an all-school record. Davis's honors and accomplishments on the gridiron were matched only by the adversity he faced off the field. As a black athlete, playing many games in the South, he was a victim of the racism on several occasions. One of the most publicized incidents occurred after Davis was selected in the Cotton Bowl MVP in 1960. Incidents occurred after Davis was selected the Cotton Bowl MVP in 1960, when he was informed that he could accept his award at the post-game banquet, but would then immediately have to leave the segregated facility. Although popular lore holds that the entire team agreed to boycott the banquet, at least one teammate had insisted that the idea was overruled by Syracuse officials. Ernie is a man to first. Ernie Davis was the first African American to win the Heisman Trophy, the first to join the Prejudice Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity, which is a nationally recognized fraternity that was initially all Jewish, and in 1962, he was the first African American player to be picked first overall in the NFL draft. Although the details are somewhat disputed, Davis's contract was considered to be the most lucrative ever offered to an NFL rookie. His teammates and supporters look forward to seeing the 6'2", 210-pound Ernie Davis sharing the backfield with Jim Brown, breaking countless records and leading the Cleveland Browns to a decade of victorious seasons. Davis's character and his athletic accomplishments caught the eye of John F. Kennedy, who had been following his college career. They finally had the chance to shake hands and talk when Davis was in New York to accept the Heisman Trophy in December 1961, an encounter that thrilled Ernie. In 1963, when John F. Kennedy heard Davis would be honored by his high school with a school holiday, the president sent a telegram reading, "Seldom has an athlete has not been more deserving of such a tribute. Your high standards of performance on the field and off the field reflect the finest qualities of competition, sportsmanship, and citizenship. The nation has bowed down upon you in its highest award for your athletic achievements. It's a privilege for me to address you tonight as an outstanding American, and as a worthy example of our youth, I salute you." Those seasons would never come, with Ernie Davis at running back and Jim Brown also at running back. However, as Davis was diagnosed with an acute monocytic leukemia during preparations for the 1962 College All-Star Game, treatment began immediately, and Davis was optimistic that he would ever recover from this condition. When the cancer went into remission that fell, it seemed only a matter of time before he made his pro debut. But Cleveland coach Paul Brown featured for Davis' health and kept him on the sidelines. The disease would prove incurable, and Davis died on May 18, 1963, never having played a professional football game. I emailed the head coach's assistant, who takes his emails, and asked what they have done to celebrate Ernie. She said, "Ernie is one of the most celebrated athletes in Syracuse University history. His legacy has been celebrated in many ways over years, and I am sure will continue to honor him in years to come as well. One way the university has honored him is a football field at the Dome is named Ernie Davis Legend Field, with an extra emphasis on the 44-yard line, which is the jersey number he wore. The number 44 holds a special place in Syracuse history. If Ernie Davis never won the Heisman Trophy, would Ojo Simpson, Marcus Allen, and Bo Jackson ever win it? Maybe Ernie Davis was one of their all-time heroes." In the 1960s was the era of Muhammad Ali's opposition to the Vietnam War and John Carlos's and Tommy Smith's Black Power salute at the 1968 Olympics. In 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. said "I have a dream" speech. Malcolm X, in June 1964, he founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity, which identified racism, and not the white race, as a comedy of justice. His more moderate philosophy became influential, especially among members of the Student Nonviolence Coordination Committee.